Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about, at the request of a couple of different comments on another YouTube video on how to use Newtonsoft JSON to bind complex objects to like a data grid view, and the other video I'll post a link to it in case you need a refresher on that particular video. There were comments on can we also use it to consume a web service and actually take that JSON and go ahead and wrap it to a data grid view. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here, but before we actually get to that, I'm just going to kind of show you what I stood up on the back end so that we can look at exactly what we're going to be consuming. And then there's also going to be a third-party app that I am also going to bind another data grid view just to show you how consistent it really is, and that I didn't do anything special here to make it too easy for you. So where we're starting is I've already got a copy of this real simple service I made running. All it is a single method right now for stores, where I'm going to get stores, and then if we look at the method, here's what we're doing. What we're really doing is we're just querying this real quick database here with two stores in it, a store in Wichita, Kansas, and a store in New York, New York. And then here is what it's doing in the code. It's using link to entities to query the stores and return these basically those two stores into a custom class. The class looks just like this. It's a store ID, address, state, zip, and city. And then actually I'll go ahead and stop this real quick. Here you go, where I've got the store, and I actually published that into its own project called core so that I could import it into the actual application, the Winform that we're going to use to consume the JSON result. So I'm going to go ahead and start this service back up so that it's ready for us. Okay, and then one of the things I like to do when I first look at a JSON or a web service is I actually like to request the JSON in PowerShell. I don't know why exactly, other than that it gives me a real easy way to see the format of that JSON real quickly and just kind of like see what I expect the classes and everything to look like. So I'm going to do it here in PowerShell real quick, and so I run in PowerShell invoke web request, specify my URI, which I've got the URL, and then here I have the method, and then here's our result where we've got our first store here, and then the second item in the array is this store here. And you can also generally do the more or less the same thing in a browser. So hit it in the browser, I get the exact same result, but for some reason PowerShell to me is just slightly easier to do and look at and manipulate if I want to try to then do something else real quick with it. So we've got that. And then here I've got the application that I plan to use to consume the service. And it is a web form that I apparently broke doing something else. Second, while I fix this. Okay, so sorry about that. I apparently decided when I was getting this ready that I didn't need my actual partial class for the form. So I broke that, and now we're back to where it needs to be. So to look at it real quick, so it's a WinForm application. WinForm application has two controls on it. It's got a grid that I've called service grid that I'm going to use to bind to the service that I created for this video. And then I also found a nice third-party freebie weather service that I'm going to use to bind a JSON from to this second one called weather view. If we go into the form 1 load event, I'm going to go ahead and create first a method that I'm going to call update stores. Update stores grid, actually. So this is what I'm going to call as soon as the form loads, and then bind from the web service to the control. And I'm not going to take into account a loading bar or anything like that. So that's something if you're using, you'll want to actually do away from the UI thread and probably provide indication that something is happening. So the first thing we need to do is I am using system.net.http. There's a couple of different classes that you can use to do REST queries, both from Microsoft and from third-party. There's actually some third-party ones that if you're going to be doing a lot of things, it'll reduce your code a little bit and look a little bit cleaner. But this should work just fine for what we're doing here today. Okay, so here we have our method, update source grid. And then we're going to use HTTP client. I think I'm going to be kind of far off today and a little slow on a few things. I'm going to blame the weekend. It was a good weekend, and I think I'm still recovering from a party. Okay. So I'm going to copy and paste that URL that I showed you a little bit earlier. Only need it here as far as to the actual service address. Don't need the method here, although we could do the method here. Okay, and then we need to specify the format that we expect to get a response in. And that format is going to be application JSON. Okay, so that's the first part. And then we also are going to go ahead and tell it that we want our response. I'm going to do client.getAsync and client.base address, and then we're going to also specify the actual method here that we are calling, which is going to be stores. And then we're going to say that the response that we get, we want the result. And then we're going to say if our response is success, or is success status code, then go ahead and do what we want to do with that result JSON. So our data is going to be from the response, and it's going to be response.content.read as string async. And then we're going to have also a variable stores is a new list of store. And then store again is that class that I wrote specifically for this. It was that separate project in the service that I also imported to this project, and you'll see it right over here. I've got the stores class right here. So we're just saying when we populate our stores, we want it to be that same class, which is what you'll get a lot of times from like an API that actually provides all the stuff for you too. You'll get your documentation, the service addresses, and then a lot of times you'll also go ahead and get a class. So when it's possible, that's definitely helpful. The last thing I need to do before I actually bind this to the data grid view is use Newtonsoft again. So I'm going to say Newtonsoft JSON, I want you to convert and populate object, and it's going to be data to string. And if you actually step through this, what you'd see, and we can step through it as we go, is that you have an object that's a string, but it's not a string object. So you do need to make sure that you tell that specifically to convert it to a string so that it'll run. And then we're going to tell it to populate that object into stores. And there we should have it. And then the last thing we're going to do is the actual binding, where we're going to say our data grid view dot data source is our custom list here. So I'll go ahead and put a breakpoint right here, and we'll run this. Yep. And some days you just say, I am not going to do anything right the first time today. Which is unfortunate because I do still need to go into work at some point today too. Okay, so here we go. Update stores. It's going to hit. Okay, I forgot. The recording software likes to use the same button I need to debug to step through it, so there might be a weird blip here. Okay, so response currently has nothing, but if we go through here, okay, here we go. We'll look at data real quick. So here, so data does see this basically as a string already. So we're going to continue through it because I don't really need to look at it, and here you'll see that we have bound that JSON result into the Form 1 data grid view. The stores data grid. Okay, and then I'm going to get rid of this breakpoint, and then we're going to go ahead and do the second data grid view, just to do a second one real quick. The second one, like I said, is from a REST service for the weather. So here I'm going to go ahead and do another private void, and I'm going to call this one city weather. And what'll happen is we're going to pass in a string and the city name. And then I'm also going to do this one, so that what I want to do is when we click on a any cell in that data grid view from the cities, it's going to pass in the name of the city, and it's going to use that to populate the second one. So that's going to be our event to fill it. So here we have our city name, and it's going to be service grid, and it's going to get the column city from the row that we click, and it's going to use the row index of the clicked cell to get that string for us. And then just a little bit of type safety here should get the make sure that it's an actual string. Of course, realistically, there's probably a few other checks we'd want to do, like make sure the value makes sense at all. If it doesn't return anything, throw an error, but we're not going to handle that stuff. So, okay, and then we're going to, from there, call our city weather method, which is back up here. Make this hidden so that this is a little bit more readable. And then up here, this is going to be kind of a lot of boilerplate code from the last method. So I'm going to copy a lot of it right back in. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and do that. So here, it's exactly the same. It'd be a good thing to, if you were going to try to do this, maybe make a couple of actual methods to do the first part here. For example, client equals the base address, all of this stuff we don't need to do right here. Although I have done something slightly different with, I'm actually using my get base address. I'm doing get URI, and then I wrote another class to call this particular REST service, or populate this one for me. So where are we here? Okay, yep, right here. So this is the actual URI. This is a free key they gave me, which I should probably try to blur out or something. But here it is. weathers.co.api.php is where we're calling it from. So there we go. We even know that the backend is PHP and not .NET, so that should clear that up quite a bit. And then here is our get URI, where we're doing string.format API URL from right there, and then our key and city.replace. We're making sure, according to the API, it should be if for a city like New York, new space York, it should be new plus York. So that's where how we're populating our base address there. So we're going to go back through and copy in a few, or paste in a few lines again. Okay, so data is response.content.read string async.result again. Information, var information is a new weather data, which is a class that I made. Which brings me back to another thing, is that a lot of times when you look at the JSON, the easiest way and the best way to do it is to go ahead and, if you can't get a class from the APIs, just write your own class to kind of take care of that for you. So here I have a public class weather data, which includes an API version and a location details data. Location details is another class that I wrote here, which includes all of the fields that I know that JSON is going to contain just by looking at it in PowerShell, which we can even we won't do that right at this second. So we've got that, and then I'm going to go ahead and run it, and I'm going to step through it so that we can get the base address. Okay, so I'm going to click on New York, and you'll see we are New York here. It's going to have to be really hard not to try to step through this. I'm going to have to figure that out some other time. Okay, so back at it. Here we go. So I want to step through. So here we go. Our base address is going to be right here, and I'm going to do Invoke Web Request Uri. And then I know what I want is going to be in content again. This service is quite a bit slower than the one that's running here locally. And it wants to run really, really, really slow this morning, apparently. Okay, which it likes to do this occasionally for me. Looks like this might not be our day for this one. No, it is not going to run today. So we're going to go ahead and continue it just because I know it's not going to do anything. We'll see if maybe another one is going to work better today. Yeah, no, it looks like basically today we are just not going to be able to query this particular one. All in all, it should work exactly the same, except for either this REST service is down or they broke something else. So we're just going to have to skip this one today, which is unfortunate because it should have really driven the point home. If anybody has any questions on it or wants me to do an external web service, just let me know and I can take a look at that though. Thanks.